Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurship Forum. Today it's my pleasure to present to you a very sharp young man named Josh England. He is the president and CFO of CR England Trucking. And right now it's a worldwide trucking company, isn't it, Josh? Okay. He's going to tell you how it started and how it evolved into the size and dynamic company that it is. Josh is a graduate of Notre Dame MBA school and a good friend of mine, and I appreciate him coming. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Josh, let him tell you about CR England, how it started, and how it got to where it is. So let's give a big hand for Josh England.
All right, hi everybody. It's good to be here with you today. Rick is a very good friend of many years, and he's asked me to come do this, so I don't know, 4 or 5 times now. So I've enjoyed doing this, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you here today. So as Rick mentioned, I'm the president and CFO of CR England. Anybody know anybody who works at CR England or has worked at CR England? Anybody have any connections here? Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about our business, and then we'll have a discussion about, thank you. We'll have a discussion about entrepreneurship and some of the principles that have gotten us where we are. So let's start actually with a video here. Okay. Not hearing the sound. Did I? Okay. I hit mute there, didn't I? Okay. Okay, there we go.
The story of CR England begins in 1920, when Chester R. England, a Plain City farmer eager for a better way to make a living, began hauling produce from Weber County and Cache Valley, Utah, to markets in Salt Lake City. Over the course of the next 4 decades, Chester and his 2 sons, Gene and Bill, grew a modest one-truck outfit.
You can ask them questions, or they can ask you questions.
Their trucks hauled potatoes from Idaho, bananas from Mexico and Central America, and produce from the irrigated farmlands of California and Arizona to markets on both coasts and everywhere in between. Through a depression, a world war, and countless economic cycles, this small family operation grew steadily into a national brand, symbolizing high-quality transportation solutions.
Of course, this was a dream. It wasn't a big dream in those days. We didn't visualize anything like England is today, but that's just made it that much more wonderful.
Today, CR England has transitioned corporate leadership to the 3rd and 4th generation of the England family, led by CEO Chad England. Through the generations, CR England has grown into the largest refrigerated transportation company in the United States, with the most efficient and cost-effective solutions. The company currently has 5 operating divisions: national and regional over-the-road services, cross-border services to and from Mexico, dedicated contract carriage, and intermodal, our fastest-growing and most innovative business division. Our double-stack intermodal service, called TempStack, offers cost savings, consistent and reliable transit, 24/7 monitoring, and provides vital additional capacity to the refrigerated transportation market. Since 2010, when the first intermodal container was purchased, to today, the TempStack container fleet has grown over 450%. The The innovative new containers ride on a nationwide network of expedited priority trains and are complemented by industry-leading drayage trucks. Together, they are 60% more fuel efficient than over-the-road trailers and deliver reliability and quality to our customer supply chain. CR England is dedicated to continued innovation and excellence. With the focus and dedication of all employees and drivers, there's no limit to what we can achieve together.
So this is Chester Rodney England. That's my great-grandfather. And he started the business in 1920 in Plain City, Utah. Anybody know where Plain City is? Up, yeah, northwest of Ogden. Yeah. I see a question back here.
So I was just going to say I know Todd England.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I live.
You live what? I'm sorry?
I live in Pepperwood.
Okay, nice. Okay. Yeah, Todd's my uncle, and he's one of the, you saw him on the video, one of the members of the family. So Chester Rodney England, he was a farmer up in Plain City, and there were difficult times back then. He was having a hard time achieving his goals in providing for his family, and so he decided one day to get a truck and start hauling produce from farm to market. So this is an entrepreneurship forum. He was an entrepreneur, and that's how we got our start. And you see his two sons there, Gene and Bill, pictured, and so they joined the war. Back then, this is a long time ago, they started driving trucks when they were 12 years old. So times are a lot different. Gene, who's on the left there, that's my grandfather. And you know, one of the stories along the way, we were a very small company and we were just scratching our way through this thing, you know, and growing little by little. Gene and Bill both served in World War II, and they weren't smokers, and throughout the war they sold their cigarette rations with the goal of saving up enough money that they could buy that second truck for the company when they returned from the war. So they did that and had, sure enough, saved enough money, and that's how the second truck was purchased. So you know, we grew little by little along the way, and just figured things out. And Plain City, Utah, so it's this very small town. I mean, today it has, you know, just short of 6,000 people there. Back then, it was only a few thousand, couple thousand. But interestingly, CR England has its roots there. Have any of you seen Swift out on the road? They're big trucks that have that Swift logo on them. Knight, Pride, those are all trucking companies that together employ almost 32,000 people, and they all came from that little city, strangely enough. So it's you know, that was a center actually of entrepreneurship. I'd call that a very unlikely center of entrepreneurship there. So as we grew, we innovated. So this was back in the 50s, before the interstate highway system was built. Our company became the first to offer coast-to-coast 72-hour transit, and so that was really tough back then, going on surface roads, and so we became the first to do that, and really became known for our long-haul transportation of refrigerated products. Anybody know what percent of the freight that moves around the U.S., what percent of what's in a store that you'd buy moves by truck or rail? Any ideas, any guesses?
80%.
What's that? 80%, close to, right? When you combine the two, it's about 80%. Yeah, trucking's 70 plus, and rail is 6 to 10, depending on how you look at it. So that's correct. So, and then this is a family business. Many of you, I'm sure, know people who are in family businesses, or you may have family businesses yourselves. But we have all the issues that come with family businesses, and we've been able to manage through those. And I'm in the 4th generation of our family ownership of the business, and I'd be happy to share some of our experiences there. So here's a snapshot of where we are today. We're the 5th largest employer in Utah. You can see the number of trucks and trailers in service, and those containers that you saw in the video that double stack up on the rail. You can see our driver count and our staff count there. So this thing has grown into far more than Chester imagined when he started it. He was an entrepreneur just trying to provide for his family. And it's amazing to see what's happened through that beginning and then sticking with the same principles that he began with of just continuing to push this forward and continuing to innovate. We have over 80 locations around the U.S. Our annual revenue this year is projected to be $1.7 billion. Those are a few stats about us. This is our trend on revenue, so you can see it's been a very good growth period for us. We've doubled in about 6 years. Boy, we stay busy. There's so much freight to haul, that just moves around our very vibrant economy. And we're fortunate enough to be one of the premier providers of that service. We're the largest provider of refrigerated transportation services via truck, rail, cross-border in Mexico, and brokerage. We're one of the biggest there. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So we split our company up into 3 main groups in how we think about it. There's the England, North America. So that's the trucks that you see out on the road. Anybody noticed any of our trucks out on the road? You ever seen them? I see a few heads nodding there.
Can't go down the road without noticing one.
Yeah, I hope they're going the speed limit and clean, so we work hard at that. So England, North America is the one with all the trucks in it. It's the one that people think of when they think of CR England. It also is the one where we do the rail service, move the refrigerated product via rail like you saw in the video. England Logistics is a whole part of the logistics industry that most people don't realize is there. So it has no trucks. It's basically like a stock brokerage. So it buys and sells transportation. So the reason for its existence is there are many, many small carriers. I mean, hundreds of thousands of very small trucking companies, between 2 and 20 trucks. And they don't have the ability to really access the freight from the large shippers. And the large shippers, they can't really access all those small carriers. So we have relationships with 17,000 carriers where we find freight for them from the large shippers, and then we ask them to move it. So we buy the transportation from the small carriers and then sell it to the large shippers and make a little money in between. But we're pulling these 2 markets together, and so that's what England Logistics does. We're one of the largest in the nation doing that. Other business units, we have a number of other groups spanning from financial services to hotel management to medical clinics, most of which have sprung up, all of which have sprung up kind of around our trucking company. So for instance, we have to provide, any new truck driver has to have a DOT physical, a physical exam. And so we said, hey, rather than, we were paying outside exam groups so much money, and so we said, let's start our own clinic and provide those services for ourselves and then also for outside entities. So that turns into a business. So again, we're in an entrepreneurship forum here, and that's how some of these start, opportunistically. So we have a whole bunch of those that are grouped in this other business units group, the biggest of which is financial services. We are a lender to small carriers, to these small trucking companies. And so that's become actually one of our biggest business lines, is lending to these small trucking companies. We purchase their receivables and then go collect on their receivables. So those are the main groupings in our company. Within England, North America, we have these main groupings. So we have regional. National is the one that goes kind of all over the country. We have Mexico. We're the largest cross-border transportation provider for refrigerated goods. Dedicated is where our traditional model is that our truck will haul something from point A to point B, and then we find a different customer that we need something moved from point B to point C, and you just kind of bounce around the country. Dedicated is different, so it's where we'll go to, say, a Wal-Mart. They have a distribution center, and we say, we will devote 100 of our trucks just to you. They'll do nothing but your freight, but you don't have to employ your own truck drivers and your own fleet to do it. And so that's dedicated, and that's our biggest division now. And then intermodal is where we move the refrigerated goods via rail in these stackable containers. England Logistics, I mentioned, is that brokerage where we buy and sell transportation services. So you can see the listing of the various kind of categories of freight in which we do that. We have business around the world. We do supply chain management, which is helping shippers understand their supply chains, decide where to put warehouses, decide which mode to ship by. In other words, whether they should ship by rail or air or road or ocean. So we help them kind of organize and make their supply chains the most efficient they can. England Carrier Services is a group that works with these other small carriers that we have relationships with, provides them tire and fuel discounts and financing services. Okay, so here are some of our biggest customers. So many of these are names that you'll recognize, where we just move an awful lot of food. We move more than refrigerated food. We move all kinds of commodities, everything from pharmaceuticals to building supplies and everything. But our biggest commodity is refrigerated food. And it's gotten a whole lot different from where it was back when Chester was doing this. Back then, you'd put the product in the trailer, sometimes a flatbed at the time, on the trailer, and you'd throw a bunch of ice on it to keep it cold. And it was hard to regulate, hard to make sure it stayed cool. Now you have state-of-the-art refrigeration equipment that can monitor to the exact degree on maintaining that. You have equipment in our trucks that's pretty unbelievable. We had email before email. Back in the 80s, we had satellite connections with all of our trucks, and you could type basically an email back and forth way before email. And we still have that type of connectivity with the trucks. Seems a lot less remarkable today than it was then. We have all sorts of technology. So if our truck, let's say it leaves its lane without applying the blinker, we have sensors on the trucks that determine that, and it alerts the driver saying, hey, what's going on? Wake up, We also get real-time notices of that at the home office, and we feed that into our algorithms to determine that and many other data points to determine who is the biggest safety risk. And so as we get that data, we act on it. So we'll pull people off the road, we'll put them into training, we'll let's say it's late at night and we get some fatigue scores. We have some indicators where we think we can identify that the person is getting fatigued. So we'll get them on the phone and say, how you doing? It's late at night. You sure you're okay to be driving? Here are some things to be thinking about to make sure you're completely 100% safe. So other things that feed into other data we get as we approach a vehicle in front at too rapid of a rate, even if there's no hard braking event or collision, we get that data and we alert the driver in the cab real time, and we get that data real time and use that information. So there's an awful lot of technology in these trucks now. So it's a lot different than when Chester was first starting this thing out.
I have a question about your quality control.
Please, yeah.
I know a lot of the grocery stores have temp guns. You ever have trucks refused for not meeting a standard on temperature control? What do you do with the product, or what happens at that point? Yeah,
it's unusual, but it does happen here and there. So we have, first of all, the equipment that we move the freight in, it has the ability to measure what the temperature is in the trailer, okay, and it obviously controls that temperature as well. So we get minute by minute data on what the temperature is, and so we head a lot of this off by, if there's a problem, let's say there's a mechanical problem with the unit, we then know that quickly, and so we can hurry and get that load either transloaded or get the refrigeration unit repaired. So we head most of it off. Sometimes there are issues where you have where the cargo has been compromised, so where once in a rare while the temperature isn't right, and so then you work with the shipper, and usually it gets salvaged. In bad cases it ends up being animal food. Feed. In better cases, it's still very healthy product, just that they don't want their label on it. For instance, you may have chocolate that's been kind of melted and then frozen, rehardened, that no longer has the same shape and quality that you would want. So that's never sold under the label of the product. Those things will get salvaged out. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay. Back here?
So at that point, who pays for the product in that trailer?
So it depends on whose fault it is. If it's our fault, then usually we're left with that. Often it's not our fault. Often it'll be the shipper's fault if they load it warm. Refrigeration equipment on the trailer is not designed to cool things down. It's designed to maintain a cool temperature. And so you get into disputes or discussions about who has what % liability, and you end up working it out. So, yeah. Other questions? Okay, feel free to keep popping in as we go here. Industry sustainability. So we all have had this image in our heads, right, of the big truck guzzling black smoke, not good for the environment. I wanted to show you what's happened in our industry over the last bunch of years. So it's pretty amazing, actually, what's happened. So you see the oxides of nitrogen. So that's nitrogen oxide. That's one of the real pollutants in our atmosphere. Another one is particulate matter. So that's like soot, that ends up in the atmosphere. So you see the green and the red lines illustrate the changes in both of those two pollutants. This is coming out of trucks. And you see the huge change back from the 70s and 80s till now. Here, that's the graphical illustration. Here are some statistics on it. So nitrous oxides, or NOx, is down 99% over 10 years. Particulate matter is down 98% over 10 years. Also the sulfur emissions are down 97%. That's just since 2010. So, huge changes there. That middle bullet has an interesting stat. You could have 60 of today's vehicles, 60 of our trucks today, sitting there idling. They put out the same amount of pollution that one truck from 1988 produced, and so it's pretty amazing the improvement on this. Particularly in our valley, this is a critical issue, right? Every winter we battle those inversions, and we're very aggressive on making sure that we do our part, and so we buy all new trucks. We don't have any trucks that are older than 4 years. The average age is less than 2 years. So we always have the newest emissions technology that's available because that's such an important issue. So, and we develop people, in any business, and I'm sure that's true in any business, but certainly in ours, our whole business is people. So the trucks don't drive themselves. Actually, I'll talk about that in a minute, but they don't drive themselves today, and even if they did, there are so many other people that go into making the operation run. Let me just have you chime in. What are all the different kinds of functions you think you'd need? Different, people doing different jobs that you'd need to run a company like ours. Just go ahead and shout them out.
All kinds of office administration.
Lots of office administration. Let's get more specific. So what kind of professionals do we need?
The accounting department.
Accountants. Excellent.
Guys,
Sorry?
IT guys.
IT. Got a huge IT staff. Yep. Good.
We can also have operation, like someone, a manager of the operation.
Manager of the operation. Yeah, you need management. Also for operations, there are a lot of different operational roles, right? There's the one who's talking to the customer to organize what loads, what products need to be moved where. Okay, then there are the people talking to the drivers, telling them, the characteristics of the load that they need to move. And then there are people who match those up. Okay, there's a fourth group who they monitor, as we talked about, the temperature on all the loads. They're watching all that to make sure that all the temperatures of all the loads everywhere are good, and they take care of it if it's not.
How about transportation routing? Scheduling the routes that least amount of time and.
That's exactly right. Yeah, time is money, right? So you got to make sure you optimize. We have optimization software that looks at where all of our drivers are. It's a map with tons of dots all over it, and then where our loads are and where they need to go. Those are a couple dimensions, but then think about, you got to get your drivers home. Okay, you got to manage their hours of service, because drivers can only run a certain number of hours a day. Okay, and you got to get the load there on time. So you have time characteristics. You have issues of some drivers don't want to go into the Northeast and deal with the tolls and congestion. So it's this big matching game. And so we have optimization software that does that, and we have people who run that. So they help make decisions using these tools. So
What
good.
about truck drivers using 2 logbooks?
Yeah.
You guys do that?
No, certainly not. Yeah. So that's been a big issue in the industry forever. Is it used to be a paper log system, where it was honor system. You log your hours, and there are very strict regulations on how often you can be driving, or how much you can drive, and how much you need to be sleeping, and so on. And so some people, enterprising people, would sometimes get 2 of those and pretend that there are 2 drivers in there. And so when they come up to an inspection booth, they'd show just 1 or 2. They'd pretend that it's 2 different people, right? So what we have on our trucks, they're all electronic onboard recorders, have been for 5 years, where it's synced in with the truck. So it knows if you're running or not, if you're actually driving or not. And so you can't cheat it that same way. Comment about regulations. So this is a pending regulation to require this of all carriers. We're in favor of that because of safety reasons. It's definitely a danger out on the highway when you still have some trucking companies who are not on electronic logs. So, yeah, I saw a question?
They have new technologies out now to where it'll actually monitor whether the vehicle's in use and or idling, because a lot of truckers go ahead and leave their trucks running so they can have air conditioner or heating because they're off on the side of the road or at a stop or whatever. And that kind of technology, it's been out for a while to where you can actually separate the drive, the actual use on the engine versus just idling, sitting there and resting.
Yeah, we use that technology, and it's a big part of our operation. We don't want that truck running if it doesn't need to be running. We buy a lot of fuel when we do, right? So we have sensors on there where if the ambient temperature is in a comfortable range, it disables the truck from being able to idle. And then certainly we measure it through the technology that you described. Yeah. Okay, so back to all the people it requires to run a trucking company, all the different kinds.
What's your output on the surety bond to $75,000 in 2013?
We're in favor. If you look, so there are regulations on these brokers. So I mentioned in England Logistics, we're a broker where we connect the small carrier with the larger shipper. There are regulations on how much your bonding needs to be. Basically, if something goes wrong and the broker goes away, at least there's a bond there to back it up. The current regulation is really out of date. 75,000 we think is still too little. When you look at what can happen on a load, what can go wrong through cargo claims, through bodily injury, those kinds of things, it goes far north of 75,000. So we're in favor of that increasing.
You've got engineering departments, you've got, well, considering how big your company is, you should have your own mechanical department to fix your fleet.
Right. So a maintenance operation of several hundred people all around the country. Engineering, yes, absolutely, to figure all this out on, the specking of the equipment. Our trucks go in wind tunnels. There's extreme work that goes into aerodynamics and fuel efficiency through engineers who work on that, because, man, any little improvement you can make yields big dividends with the number of gallons that we're pumping.
I have a question. When are you, is your company looking at investing into the new type of on-the-road hauling trucks that they have in Europe that, can automatically detect when they're coming up on a vehicle very quickly and automatically brake? Cuts the response time down from the driver himself to where it can reduce the impact of accidents and things like that, and the new aerodynamical designs that they have going on in Europe. Are you guys involved in possibly investing in that?
Yeah, so the question was, are we employing new technologies that can help avoid collisions as well as enhance fuel efficiencies? The answer is yes on both fronts. So I was in a truck the other day. I have a commercial driver's license. I like to get out and just make sure I know what's going on and feel connected with the drivers. And so I was out driving the other day, and we were testing a new truck that we did this on purpose, but we had a car with us also, and the car went on the freeway ahead of us and stopped. And hands off the steering wheel, feet off the pedals, our truck stopped without hitting it. I hit it, but without hitting it. So that technology is available and in use. So that the new trucks that we're buying have that. Every one of them has that. As far as on the side, so we have sensors that can indicate if we're in danger there. So all of this is coming, and in fact, I'll touch on the driverless truck idea. So it's an idea at this stage, but there's a lot of momentum behind this, and it's many years away. But just the thought that has anybody pulled up the Google car on YouTube? Anybody seen that? It's pretty amazing. So a guy walks out of his house, gets in his car, and he says, "Take me to the store." And he's not touching anything, right? And it takes him to the store. It navigates traffic lights, left turns, parallel parks. He gets out and says, "Thank you, Google car," or "Thank you, Google, I'm blind, and without you, I wouldn't be able to get to the store." Right? So this technology is out there, and on trucks, it's advancing. There's a test recently in Europe of a truck that it was a driverless truck. It was a controlled test, let's call it. It's not ready for the market yet, and won't be for a number of years. But what it's going to be in the short term is assistive technology, and that's already happening. So we have a lot of trucks already where it'll avoid the front collision, right? The truck will automatically brake even if the driver doesn't. Or we already have technologies where if the truck's going to roll over, it takes over the driving so it won't roll over. So we have all that, and so that's going to get better and better and decrease, highway accidents continually. And maybe someday we'll have driverless trucks if society's ready for that. The technology is going to be there. So, and we've already seen a big impact on highway safety through the technologies and the work of trucking companies. It's down dramatically as far as highway accidents. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
There's 5 things that Chester and Gene and Bill did to get your company to where it is today. What would you suggest that we look at or consider?
So I'm going to get into that. That's a great question. So we have, we have all kinds of professionals, all kinds of people who come into play. We have doctors on staff because they need to do the examinations for the new drivers. We have lawyers. We have accountants. We have many operational people. We have engineers. We have all these different kinds of people. So running a company, any company, and certainly ours, requires this team effort of so many people. So we're in the people business. And so we invest in our people. We have a thing called Summit University where we work with them and try to help them develop soft skills, leadership skills, work on ways that they can advance in the organization. I won't go through the details, but did want to talk about some of our key principles that we use to run our business. Getting to your question, Darren. And I wanted to do this more as a discussion. So accountability is one of our core principles as a business. So let me open that to you guys. As you think about running an organization, how can you promote this concept of accountability? What are things you can do to make sure that that's part of it?
Just living it yourself. So owning your mistakes and owning your mistakes openly. And so, if you're playing the roles of the boss and you've done something that's an honest mistake, even a dishonest mistake, call yourself out in front of your employees. Let them know that you're not happy with what you did and what you did differently, and these things, instead of just kind of, even if you're disappointed with it, suffering in silence is not accountable. It needs to be publicly made. I
love that. It starts with taking accountability yourself. Excellent. Other thoughts?
Documentation.
Sorry?
Documentation. documentation.
There you are. Okay.
Documentation is a way to keep people accountable for their record and their behavior.
So documentation was the comment. So what happens if you don't have documentation?
And you can't hold them accountable.
Then you can end up with different levels of expectations, right? Different, you may not have really communicated on exactly what the standard was and where we won or where we didn't win, right? Okay, good. Other thoughts?
You also need to be presentable, so whatever you are doing, you should be able to present it to whoever you are reporting to whoever you are working with.
Excellent. So set goals, right? Set a goal, present it to the whole group, and work on it together. So excellent. Those are all great parts of accountability. In our business, we view this as absolutely one of the real keys to our success, and in some ways, one of the things we try to do that help us outperform our competition. So some of the things we do there, we have a real process. We think of accountability not as just a principle, but also a process. So we have set settings where we sit with each individual and talk about the great things that happened that week or month and the things that we'd like to improve. And it's actually them saying what they'd like to improve. But it's said openly and in a way that then you revisit it a month or a week later, depends on the group, and you talk about it again. And so it leads to this continuous improvement. So accountability is absolutely critical. Communication. What are some principles of good communication in an organization like ours? Listening, excellent. That's one that's often forgotten, right?
Employees or to your customers, listening to the feedback.
Listening to employees and to customers was the comment, and I completely agree. So often you talk about communication and it's all about what you say, but it's also what you hear and what you listen to.
How you hear it, how it's perceived, how they have understood it. You've got to clarify what you're on the same page.
Make sure there's clean communication where it's been understood on both sides. Excellent. Other thoughts on communication?
So you need to look at the feedback.
Look at feedback? Perfect. Give it and look at it. I'll tell you my experience, and I'm maybe older than I look. I've been doing this for 20 years. But my experience is the biggest mistake that managers make is not being direct enough with the feedback that's being provided. So, it's good or bad, right? Good or bad feedback. But so often there are things that just aren't quite right, but the manager is afraid to or doesn't take the initiative to address it. And usually the employee wants to hear it and is ready to embrace it and improve it. And so communication is a big part of, it's one of the principles by which we try to organize our operation. So it's, direct individual feedback like we're talking. It's corporate-wide communication of what are the goals that we're all working on and what are our results. It's hard for a team to optimize its performance if it doesn't know the score, right? You think about a basketball team, if it doesn't know the score, do you think it's going to play a little differently? I think it does, right? So we make sure everybody knows the score. We're extremely open. We're a private company, but we share all our financial results with all of our employees so that they know what the score is, and so we can all work on it together. So that's communication. Hard work. So there are, you guys probably, as you think about it, can think of people like this that you know. There are really smart people all over who aren't hard workers and therefore aren't successful, right? Hard work is an absolute critical ingredient, and that's certainly true in our business. And so that's one of our, again, key principles. Let's see, oh, I'm already there. Okay, innovation. So let me tell you about a period we had in our business. So we were this long-haul trucking company. We did that point A to point B, then point B to point C, like I mentioned, just kind of bounced around. And that was our core business, and that was really all we focused on. And we felt like there was a ton of growth there, and there was a ton of growth opportunity there. But we decided, let's open up these other offerings. So dedicated, as I mentioned, intermodal. These were big departures from what we did. Mexico, England Logistics, these were all big departures from what we did before. And we chose to innovate and be an entrepreneur and try those things. And man, we're lucky we did. Our biggest division is now dedicated, and those other ones are our most profitable divisions, right? So we still like the original core, national, we call it, trucking, but those other ones are critical. Now, do you think we had some others we tried that we didn't win at? We did, right? Part of innovation is you got to try some things and be ready to take a risk and understand that you're not going to bat 1,000. In baseball, you're an all-star if you hit 1 out of every 3 pitches, or 1 out of every 3 at bats, if you get a hit, right? In business, we like to think our batting average is a little higher than that, but still, no one's going to get a hit every at bat. And so we try a lot of things, and then we are quick to call a spade when it doesn't work out and shut it down. And so that's our principle there. I saw a hand.
My question with innovation is with the refrigerated trucking, with that design that you guys have on the video and everything else, was that your guys' design that you patented, or was that something that you looked into and further developed with somebody and then bought the rights?
Some of each. So the idea for moving refrigerated freight via stackable containers, someone was doing that in a very niche application and different specifications. And so we took that idea, created our own specs on the container, and because you have all these weight restrictions, so there's a lot of proprietary specification that went into it to make it work, and many of our competitors are trying to figure that out. So it's a mixture. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you give an example of one of the innovations that failed that you guys didn't move forward with?
Yeah, we had the idea, so we were buying an awful lot of trailers, right? And there was a dealership selling us those trailers, a couple of them that were competing. And we got in our head that, hey, what if we vertically integrate where we buy that dealership and therefore not have that dealership taking some margin out of the deal, right? And the thought is sound, right? As far as, okay, we can then consolidate there and not have so many hands in the bucket, right? So we did that, and it's one that we've ended up exiting. It didn't give us the return on assets that we are used to and that we like. We ended up deciding, selling trailers and repairing trailers as a dealership is not the business we want to be in. It works, but it's not our core. It's not where we saw a lot of growth. It's geographically limited. As a dealership, you have a geography that you're limited to, and we didn't like that restriction. So that's one that didn't perform financially the way we wanted to, and then especially from a vision perspective, we determined that's not part of the core, what we want to be our core. So that's an example. If we could do it again, we would not have done that. We lost some money on that one as far as when you first buy it and all the costs that go with that, and then selling it again, you end up losing a little in the translation there. Good question. Okay, next. Execution. Okay, so you've got all the great strategy out there, then you got to execute on it. And has anybody read the Franklin Covey book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution? I don't see any hands. So that is one I would highly recommend. So my opinion, and this is one of the tenets of the book, is that most businesses don't underperform based on bad strategy. It's based on bad execution, right? So often there are good ideas that you're trying to accomplish, but you just don't put the pieces together to execute it well. And so one of the real principles there, I won't go through everything, but is focus. So when we think about execution, you can't execute optimally on everything, right? Because you can think of, we have a group of graphs called the priorities graphs where we're tracking 180 different measurements on our business, and that's actually a subset. There are a lot more than that, but you can't give your best effort at 180 things, right? And so execution partly is about prioritizing what are the things you have to win at, and that will be the differentiator between you and your competitor. Focusing on those 1, 2, or 3 things. We focus on one thing that is the biggest thing for that year, and we align the entire team around it. So that's execution. Values. man, there's business success is not worth sacrificing your values. That's our opinion, and we're willing to, if we need to, sacrifice business success if that's what it takes to maintain our values. And so we just won't compromise there. Example, there's a comment before. It's got to start with you on all this stuff. So the leader needs to be an example to others. And you don't have to be the leader on paper to be the leader in a group. And so it absolutely starts with example. So that's all I had prepared here. Any questions anybody has? Yes?
It took 20 years for Gene and Bill to buy the second truck. At what point did England start growing to become global and national? At what point did technology start to play such a big role?
Great question. So we were very small until basically the 90s, and the way that came about, our industry used to be heavily regulated, where the government would actually control the pricing in each freight lane. And it would also control who could even haul freight in each freight lane. So you had to petition for authority to do that. We all see that now as needless regulation, right? The free market handles that part of it much more efficiently, right? So anyway, what it did is it made it so we couldn't grow back then very quickly. So we had 150 trucks in 1980 when things deregulated. After deregulation, suddenly any carrier could haul in any freight lane. So imagine what happened with freight rates. Any guesses? Price to move things? Way down, right? Because all of a sudden you had all this competition. The market became much more efficient. The big carriers of the day are all gone. And it became an opportunity for people like us who were lean and small already, and so we then were able to grow. Now it took 5 or 10 years for all the carriers to get their feet under them with all the decrease in freight rates, but then that became our big opportunity. So we grew dramatically in the 90s and then the last 15 years as well. Most of it in the last 10 years. Good question. Other thoughts or other questions? Yeah.
When you introduced the intermodal, I think the slide said you had around 1,500 or so of those units. How long do you kind of project that to before it's profitable for you, and then is that something that you're going to grow? At what point does it become something that's a really sustainable section?
Yeah, good question. It's profitable today. We have 1,650 containers. The next closest competitor has less than 400, so we've got a good market share lead. We're not as profitable as we could be if we wanted to cash flow it, and just stay the same size. But what we're trying to do is be profitable and still grow aggressively right now, though, so that we can really get the corner on that market. So we grew 500 containers this year, and there are a lot of startup costs that go with that, network inefficiencies that come with adding that many containers. We've remained profitable, though. We'll continue to put our foot on the pedal there. But do it profitably. I think the business world is littered with people who tried to gain share unprofitably, thinking that they can then become profitable. So we won't compromise on that one. So we're not ever going to become unprofitable in order to grow. We understand there's some startup costs and we're comfortable with that, but not to the point where we lose all profitability. I think we're one last question. Yeah.
Who's your biggest competitor?
So it depends on the space.
Just for nationwide, coast-to-coast hauling.
Prime Inc. is the name of it. It's a large refrigerated carrier. You may notice that out on the road. And now that I've said it, you probably will. So, okay, good.
Josh, thank you. Before you clap, remember this, achieve, and using your accountability, your communication, your hard work, innovation, execution, have your values, and lead by example. And that's what CR England does. Josh is in charge, and he's done a great job. And I think that we need to give him a big hand for taking the time to come and speak to you today. We appreciate it, don't we? Absolutely. All right.